America is a country with many strange and unique customs, but perhaps one of the most unique customs that we practice in the country are the practices of paying tipped employees in restaurants and bars. We are one of the only countries in the world who pay serving staff a lesser wage only to leave room for augmentation of the tips we hope they'll receive by patrons that they serve. Don't get me wrong though, just because this is an isolated occurrence doesn't mean that it's bad. In my professional opinion, this is one of the best options available for everybody involved, but not everyone thinks so. In my 4 years of serving and in the time I've been a restaurant manager, I have run into people who don't believe in the practice, who don't know about the practice, or simply don't practice the practice for various reasons, be they political, personal, or just out of plain ignorance of the custom. A lot of people, though, are really unaware of what the actual standards are, which are a median 18% for good service, 15% for adequate or just okay service, and 20% for exceptional service. But even though people are aware of these customs, some people buck at the customs and are just like, well, it's not my duty to pay my server, it's the employer's. And while that is true, there are many reasons why restaurants operate and pay the way that they do. Here are the three biggest reasons why patrons should understand and acknowledge customary tipping procedures. First of all, according to an article in the Huffington Post, the average income of serve staff all over the country has been decreasing significantly since the 1980s. And this article also argues for the abolition of tip wages altogether. Ask any industry employee, however, and I can almost 100% guarantee you that they would argue against all points made in this article. The minimum wage for serving staff in this country is $2.13 an hour plus tips. And the article claims that the pay has been decreasing, leaving servers and bartenders alike under the poverty line. But what this article is failing to realize is that states move around and increase or decrease tips according to the cost of living and inflation at the time. In Oregon, Washington, New York, and California, some of the more expensive places to live, the serving wage has increased to $5 to $6 an hour, and even higher sometimes, like in places like New York at $9.50 an hour. But just because these other states are paying their employees higher wages doesn't mean that the practice of tipping employees is outdated or ineffective. It merely means that the state is taking care of their employees according to inflation, tax rates, and cost of living. It only makes sense that New York, Washington, etc. have higher paid rates for tipped employees since they're more expensive to live in. The federal law also states that if an employee does not earn tips equaling or being greater than $7.50, which is the standard all over the country for the minimum wage, that the employer has to make up the difference. If, however, restaurants paid employees a flat rate of $7.50, the food industry would experience a mass inflation and maybe even recession. Which brings me to my next point. I'm going to set a paradigm for y'all. Let's just say that all tipped employees made $7.50 flat per hour, which isn't a fair wage for the work, but let's just say that's a little less than 150% pay increase. This extra money that restaurants would be missing out on is going to be made up for somewhere else. But they're not going to take it out of the wages for the people who are already paid hourly, like cooks, prep people, managers, hostesses. It's going to show up again. It's going to be reaccounted for in your menu prices and what you're paying for a steak. In Australia, in fact, employees are paid $15 an hour, and the average cost of a plate in Melbourne, which is one of the cheapest cities in Australia, is $33 per hour for average Chili's quality food. And that's insane, because in today's culture and society, in the fast-paced life that we live, going out to eat has become integral to our society. And if a restaurant paid a wage that didn't require tips, most of us wouldn't even be able to afford it. Not to mention my third and final point, which is that tips give servers the extra motivation that they need to give you the best experience possible in a restaurant. There are always exceptions to universal statements like the one I'm about to make, but let's take for a second McDonald's and a full-service restaurant at a comparison. Have you ever had a bad experience in the McDonald's drive-thru? Probably. Everyone has. The wait times are ridiculous, the employees are unfriendly sometimes, and they really don't care about your problems. But tell any server in a restaurant that you have a problem, and everybody's going to come to your table trying to fix it. The manager's going to comp your meal, they're going to see if there's anything else they can do for you, and most of the time the server actually cares about what's happening in your meal. Everyone wants to find a solution to your problem to ensure the best experience for you. Now, this is not only because the server wants a good tip, but also because they genuinely care. But on a long shift where I've, been working my tail off, everything's going wrong, knowing that I hold my own pay in my hands sometimes gives me the extra motivation I need to continue working my tail off. But at the end of the day, although tipping should be compulsory in the United States as is custom, it's definitely never set in stone. This means that tipping is more flexible than the menu increases that we already talked about. If you have a bad experience at a restaurant, you have something to say about it, you're in control. But if tipped employees were paid a regular wage, it would be likely that they wouldn't bend over so far backwards to get you your 6th Shirley Temple as quickly as you need it. On another token, if your server really just doesn't seem like he or she cares about your visit, you have something to say about it. You are in control. So once again, for the people in the back, patrons of a restaurant should acknowledge and understand the customary tipping procedures of no less than 18% for good service. Not only because it is customary in the country in which you preside, but it is better for everyone involved. You get good service while also having more of a say in your service. The restaurant makes more money while keeping your menu costs low, and your server is in more direct effect of their own wage, which is better than what it would be at an hourly wage where your food would cost more. Win, win, win.